What is up, guys? Randomodium here. So, Worlds has started, and the professional drafting style is different than solo queue and flex queue. Obviously, not only are there more pick and ban phases at professional level than there are in like solo queue, but just like the importance of the drafting phase in general is it's much higher importance in professional level than it is in solo queue and flex queue. So I did want to do a introductory video on basically like professional drafting and like pros, cons, things like that for the different sides, the different picks, and just general strategy, just generally just an introduction to drafting at the professional level. And this will also help you in Clash, and it'll also help you in amateur leagues because both Clash and amateur leagues use the same drafting format as the pros do. So yeah, I think the big difference between professional drafting and solo queue drafting, first off, is that there are two pick phases and two ban phases in professional play. There's only one pick phase and one ban phase in like solo queue. So in solo queue, you guys may be used to everybody getting one ban, and then you go right into pick phase. It's different at the professional level. So at the professional level, there is a ban phase, then there is a pick phase, then there is a second ban phase, then a second pick phase. So we'll go through the different parts of the draft, and then we'll go over some of the strategies and things like that with the different parts of the drafting phases. So first up is first ban phase. So each team gets 3 bans, and they do them sequentially. So blue side bans 1 champ, then red side bans 1 champ, then blue side, then red side, then blue side, then red side. So 6 bans total. All bans are unique. So it's not going to be like in solo queue where each team can ban the same champion. Both sides get to see what the other team bans, and you can adjust your bans based off what the other team bans. So for example, we saw this a lot with like Caitlyn Ashe. When Caitlyn Ashe were like the two most dominant AD carries, if one side banned Ashe, the other side would ban Caitlyn. Or if one side banned Caitlyn, the other side would ban Ashe because they didn't want the other team to get one of the others, essentially. So that's the first ban phase. Then you go into the first pick phase. So first pick phase starts off with blue side picking first. So blue side gets 1 pick, which is called the B1 pick. And then red side gets 2 picks. So red side gets their R1 pick and then their R2 pick. Then it goes back to blue. Blue gets 2 picks, so that's their B2 and their B3. And then red side gets a third pick called R3. That's the end of the first pick phase. Then there is a second ban phase, starting off with red side banning first this time. So red side does their 4th ban, then blue side, then red side, then blue side for a total of 10 bans. And then we go into the second pick phase. So second pick phase starts off with red side picking their 4th champion, R4. Then you go to blue side picking their 4th champion, blue 4, and their 5th champion, blue 5. And then red side gets the final pick, which is their R5. So what are the advantages and disadvantages of each side? So you can see that I kind of highlighted where I highlighted blinds and counters. So you can see that blue side has 3 blind picks and 2 counters. So their blind picks are usually considered B1, B3, and B5. Their counter picks are considered B2 and B4. Red side, it's the opposite. They have 3 counter picks, 2 blind picks. So their counter picks are considered to be R1, R3, R5. Their blind picks are considered to be R2, R4. So essentially, blue side has to do 3 blind picks, but they get the first pick. Red side gets 3 counter picks, but they don't get the first pick. So that's what you really have to weigh on the advantages of blue side versus red side at the most fundamental level. It's a question of, is that first pick worth a counter pick, essentially? And whether or not it's worth it to you is dependent upon the team, the players, the meta, what champions are strong, general strategies. Like if there's, 7 champions that people consider good, and you know that 6 of them are going to banned, then blue side becomes really powerful because then you're guaranteed to get that 7th champion, essentially, that's overpowered. So it's based off a lot of which champions are strong in the meta, which champions do teams prioritize, that type of stuff. In general, I do prefer red side. I do like my counter picks. I do think counter picks are very, very strong, and it's only in certain instances where I feel like the disadvantage of blue side, meaning having one less counter is worth it to get that first pick, essentially. So the big thing with drafting at like a high level is that you don't really look at the counter picks. So the counter picks are kind of easy. That's like the child's play portion of the draft. Like you should be able to counter pick somebody. That's like basic introductory level. The hard part of the draft, especially at like a professional level, competitive level, are the blind picks. Like what do you blind pick? That is what makes or breaks your draft, is what do you blind pick? Because you have to be able to pick things that you don't get destroyed with, essentially. So in general, you either want to be using your blind picks for power picks or for flex picks. And I do feel like flex picks are a really underutilized strategy at the professional level. I do think we're going to see flex picks become a lot more popular. Maybe not necessarily at this World Championship, but in future years, flex picks will become the norm because of how much power they have. But you can definitely exploit people in Clash and in amateur leagues if you have a couple flex picks lined up. So in general, you want to be using your blind picks either for just like really safe like power picks or your flex picks. You can also use it for lanes where it's difficult to get punish. So for example, I think that jungle you can blind relatively easily because you can avoid a bad jungle matchup with smart pathing. I think ADC, a lot of times you can blind pick because the support pick can counterbalance the bot lane if the bot laner gets counterpicked, essentially. So I feel like getting support pick counterpick is more important than getting bot lane counterpick in general. So, yeah, I think that another common mistake I see in drafting, and you can look for this at the World Championship too, is picking your support pick too early in the draft. I do think that a lot of teams undervalue having a support counter pick, and I do think that a lot of teams undervalue how much a support pick can skew your composition. Because supports, they can range over like greatly, right? Like you can go anything from like a tank to an enchanter to a mage. So support can just really change the composition greatly, and your pick and support can really swing the bot lane matchup and swing how much attention the bot lane needs from jungle or mid lane or top lane TPs, things like that. So I do think a lot of teams undervalue support. I do think some teams are trying to pick that up, and you're seeing people delay support later and later in the draft, and that's why they understand that support is powerful. It can really swing a composition. Where I see most teams kind of fumble the draft, I would say would be the blue 3 pick and the R4 pick. So red side 4th pick and blue side 3rd pick is usually kind of a make or break point in the draft. So if you pick wisely with blue 3 and red 4, then you usually will win the draft. It's usually really easy to R5. It's usually really easy to B1. So R5 and B1 are considered to be like some of the strongest picks in the draft order. R3 is also really strong, so you can do some really clever things with R3 if you play things rightly. But yeah, like B3 and R4, R4 is usually considered to be the worst pick in the draft because you're after that second ban phase, but you're still a blind pick. So it just really sucks. B5 is usually considered better than R4 because at least for B5, you see 4 out of the 5 picks. So you have a better sense of what their composition is going to be and what their composition is missing. When you're R4, you only see 3 of blue side picks. So they still have 2 picks on blue side to go. So R4, you just feel really weak in general. So figuring out who's going to be your R4 on your team, or a professional team figuring out who's going to be R4 in a particular draft, is really important. I really advise people that your R2 on red side, you should be looking to flex pick your R2. If you can flex pick your R2, that's puts you in a really, really strong position. Same thing on blue side, but blue side, you really, like, you kind of need 2 flex picks if you want to be really strong. Like, if you can flex pick both your B1 and your B3, that puts you in like a really commanding position, because you get to see 4 out of the 5 picks on red side before you pick your final 2 picks and lock in where your flex picks are going. So if you can do that, I think that's like the idealized state. But even if you can only get 1 flex pick in, like if you flex pick your B3 and then you just you pick a power pick for your B1, that's still fine. But in general, like R2 and B3, you should definitely be looking to try and use flex picks in those positions when possible. Other big thing is R3. Very powerful position because you can pick something that's maybe a little bit risky, and then you go right into a ban phase, and then you can ban out 2 major counters to your R3 pick. So you see a lot of teams will pick top lane, R3, and then they'll ban out 2 top laners that they're worried about with the second ban phase. So that's kind of like a really common strategy that you'll see. So in general, you see teams do this, but in general, I would say that you want to try to avoid it. Is sometimes teams will give up a counter pick and they'll blind pick something if they feel like it's really that strong. You got to be really careful with that. So for example, you might see this a lot where, let's say like B1 picks their jungle, and then R1, R2, they pick bot lane support. And the question is, why? Like, do you really need to pick your support R2? Are you that worried about your support being picked? Like, there's no reason why you should. Why not just pick your AD carry and then counter pick their jungler, and then save your support pick for like R3 or R4, maybe even R5, depending on how long blue side holds their support pick. So those are the type of things you have to think about. Those are the type of things you should be looking for in the professional level, because these little tiny mistakes, these little tiny choices the teams make, it can wind up biting you very, very hard at the professional level, because obviously pros are really good at this game, so they usually punish mistakes really well. So definitely keep an eye out for that. See if teams are utilizing their counter pick positions well to actually counter pick the enemy team. See if they're using their blind picks to either secure a really good like safe pick, or whether they are using it as a flex pick. If you see that, then that's like a sign that they have like a really good coaching staff and they really are on the ball when it comes to their pick ban phase. And then there's also, you can look at what is a team R3, right? Do they R3 something that's kind of ballsy, and then they go right into ban phase and ban out counters to their R3 pick? What do they effectively use their R5 pick to counter pick? What do they put as their R4? Because R4 is considered a really weak position in the draft. Like, a lot of times, this is why a lot of times you see like R4 is an Ornn, things like that, like, or an Orianna, you know, like really like kind of like safe, like neutral kind of laning champions. So those are a lot of like really key things to look at. So obviously this is just kind of like surface level stuff. I'm not going super deep, but I definitely wanted to give you guys a little bit of an introduction to the draft phase. Hopefully you get a greater appreciation for drafting at the professional level. And I will be talking about this stuff in future videos. I'm thinking about doing some VOD reviews of games from the World Championship. So if there's any games in particular that you think I should VOD review, leave a comment below on what games I should VOD review. And I will try to do that. And I'll definitely talk about the drafting phase in those videos. So anyway, hope you guys have a fantastic day. This is Randmonium signing off.